Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, Burnout and Balance Coach and Wellness Expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance. Hello, everybody. I am back with an Ask the Coach installment of the Bite Size Balance podcast. And today I'm answering a question that I get asked all the time. As you know, I work with very busy people who are approaching burnout or in burnout. Many of them are relying on unhealthy coping mechanisms too often, like alcohol, social media, food, and they're in a place where they're trying to make changes, but they know that in order to make the changes that they need to make, they need to say no more often. And so the question I hear all the time is, how do I say no? I can't do it. I find myself caught on the spot. It feels impolite to say no, and I'm all the time leaving meetings, leaving kids' activities, and realizing that I have said yes to yet another thing. So this podcast is focused on how to say no. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I talk about this all the time and when I do corporate wellness presentations because it's such an important skill. And it's something that we are notoriously bad at. I think women are worse at it than men. That's my experience. And I think that that's partly probably as a result of how we're raised, generally speaking. Obviously, this is a generalization. But many of the busy women that I work with find it very, very difficult to say no. The most common resistance to saying no more often that I hear is that women feel like it's going to sound rude if they say no, and they want to be seen as helpers. They want to be seen as people who are willing to do for other people. But again, you can't pour from an empty cup. So in order for us to fill our own cups up, we have to free up some time. And in order to free up some time, we need to stop saying yes to everything. So let's get into this. How do we say no more often? I have some really, really practical ideas around this. The first thing I want to say is this. The more we avoid getting put on the spot, the more we avoid putting ourselves in situations where something is going to be asked of us, and it's an actual face-to-face encounter, the easier it is to say no. So the first kind of trick or tip that I have is to reduce the opportunities to get put on the spot. How do you do that? Well, technology is our friend here. You can use call display. So you can start looking at the phone numbers when they come up on your phone, and you can make a conscious decision not to accept the call and to let it go to voicemail. Do this more often, because if somebody is going to ask you to do something, they're going to leave that message on your voicemail. If they leave that message on your voicemail, that gives you the opportunity to listen to the message and actually go through the exercise of determining whether the ask is something that will serve you, whether it's something you have time to do, whether it's something that you want to do, and whether it's something that will actually serve you in the long run. Again, if you pick up the phone and get caught on the spot with that person, you're going to feel that pressure to say yes. And it's going to take away the opportunity to actually have a kind of, conscious thought process around whether this thing is actually going to serve you. So call display is a great tool. Use it more often. Let your phone go to voicemail. The other thing is if, this certainly was the case when I practiced law, I would often let the phone go to voicemail and there would be no message left. And that's because whoever it was so desperate for somebody to help them that they just called somebody else. And so, you just never know. You might actually get out of the thing by simply not answering the call because they might find somebody else who's able to do that thing that you don't really want to do. You can also use email and text as a way of communicating with people who are likely to ask you to do stuff for them. So if you're on a committee or a board, using email instead of having phone conversations or in-person meetings can help with this because, again, if the request is sent by email or by text, you have the time to actually consider thoughtfully how you want to respond instead of getting caught on the spot. So avoid getting caught on the spot is my first little piece of advice around saying no more often. But here's the big one. This is the one that people find really, really helpful when I talk about how to say no, either in corporate presentations or when I'm working one-on-one with clients. And that is this. You need to develop a script. Now, a script is literally that. So it's a set of words that you practice over and over until they roll off of your tongue. And it becomes something that you can just draw on in the moment when you get asked to do something. Now, your script, there's a couple of things that need to be present in order for your script to work. In my experience, the script has to have some element of truth to it. So it has to feel true to you. If it feels like, an excuse and it doesn't feel true to you, then you're not going to be able to deliver it in a way that sounds truthful, to be honest. So I think it needs to have truth to it. The second thing is that it needs to feel not rude. So you need to feel good about what it is you're saying. So those are kind of the two key components of a good script when it comes to saying no. It needs to have some truth to it, and it needs to feel polite. So let me give you an example. Here is my script around work stuff. So I, as a speaker, often get asked to speak. It's a regular thing. I'll get requests by email, but also I'll just run into people and they'll ask me. They might say something like, oh, I've got this, we have this group of women that meet once a month and we're looking for somebody to come and speak about burnout prevention. I'm wondering if you might be interested in doing that. Here's the script. The script is this. That sounds amazing. It's so great that you guys have that group in place and that you're going to support those women in this way. I would love to be a part of that. Unfortunately, I don't have my calendar with me right now. Could you do me a favor and send me an email and remind me, and I'll check my book and get back to you. That is my script. It rolls off of my tongue. I use some variation of that script about once a week. Now, that script is true. I don't carry my calendar around with me, and I do think it's probably a great thing. However, I don't know if it's going to serve me to do it. And so the script feels true to me when I say that. It also does not feel rude at all. And so that one works really, really well for me in the work setting. Now, I also have a script for personal stuff, largely around asks that get made of me in relation to my kids. My kids are getting older now, so it doesn't happen as much, but I am on like a gymnastics board and I do, support my kids in all of their activities. And so I find myself getting asked to do things fairly regularly. My script around my kids is completely different. If somebody asked me, for example, as to whether I want to take on the bake sale fundraiser, my response might be something like this. Oh, you know what? I know that's really important, but the truth is my kids are in grade 11. They're only going to be home for 2 more years. And I promised myself and them that I would stop saying yes to so many things so that I could spend some time with them before they leave for university. Again, true, 100% true. Also doesn't feel rude. And normally when I say that to people, I can see it's almost like a little light bulb in their eyes when I say that, and they're thinking to themselves, oh, that's actually a really good reason to not do this thing. So it feels really legit to me. It doesn't offend people when I say it. And again, it's a script. It rolls off of my tongue. I don't have to think about it very much. The first example of the script that I gave you around work, what happens when I say that to people, I don't have my schedule. Can you send me an email and let me know? Just remind me of it and I'll get back to you. A few things have happened there. The most important thing is that I haven't said yes on the spot, right? The second thing that's happened, though, is that I have effectively passed the baton on to them. The ball is in their court now. They have to send me an email, and there's a decent chance they'll forget to do that, and that might be the end of this ask just because they don't send the follow-up email the next day. But the third thing that I have done is if I do get an email from them, it gives me time again to go and look at my schedule and actually consider whether this is something that I want to do, whether I have the time for it, and whether it's something that will actually serve me in the long run. And listen, a lot of the time I say yes to these things, but sometimes they really don't serve me, or I'm just way too busy, and it will just lead to a very stressful week if I say yes. In the second script, the one that I use in relation to kids' activities, that one is, I think, even more effective because I have said no on the spot with that. It's the end of the conversation when I use that one. So again, there are so many different versions of these scripts, and I have clients out there all over the place with different scripts that they use. But coming up with a script is really empowering because you always know what to say. And it doesn't feel rude, it does feel truthful, and it prevents you from saying yes on the spot, which is the main goal here. So think about it. What kind of a script could you develop for yourself that feels true, right? It might be something as simple as this. I would really love to help with that, but I've really found, like, in the last year that I've kind of lost my sense of balance, and I'm really working on saying no to more things so that I can take care of myself. That's a perfectly reasonable script. Doesn't sound rude, probably true for many of you who are listening, and very, very effective when it comes to not saying yes. So the script is the second little tip that I have for you. The third thing I want to say is this around saying no. You just have to do it. The more you say no, the easier it gets. And that is something that you won't really believe until you actually experience it. But I'm going to encourage you to start practicing this. What does it feel like to say no? What does it feel like? And what does it say about you to say no? What does that actually say about you if you say no? You probably have a lot of stories in your head around what that says about you. You probably think that says that you're selfish and that you're not helpful and that you're impolite and that you don't care about other people. But the truth is that says a lot of things about you that are very, very different from that. That says, if you were my client, I would say that says that you recognize that balance doesn't come for free, and that you have to work at it, and that in order to create a life that you love, you need to say no to some things. It also says to me that you recognize that selfish is not a 4-letter word. It also says to me that you understand that, in order to be a healthy, well person, you need to take time for yourself. You need to figure out how to do that. And part of setting aside time for yourself to take care of yourself means you have to say no more often. So it says something very different to me than it probably says to you or to that voice in your head when you say no. So I encourage you to just kind of dig into that and ask yourself, what does it mean if I say no more often? And what would that open up for me? What possibilities would be available to me if I said no more often? And I would suggest you do this. And this comes from, I interviewed my mentor and semi-idol, to be honest, Annie Grace, on my podcast. I was so lucky that she agreed to be a guest on my podcast, and it was really one of the most fun podcast interviews I've done. But one of the things that Annie said, and she's a very, very successful, very busy CEO and mom of 3, and I asked her about some of her strategies around maintaining balance in her life, and she talked about this idea of creating a list of what she calls energy drains and energy gains. And I loved this idea. It's something that I've worked into my coaching practice, and I have a number of clients who have been tracking energy gains versus energy drains over the last few months. The idea is that whenever you do something, you get mindful around how it's making you feel. Is this something that's actually increasing your energy and making you feel better, or is this something that is actually draining you of energy? And you start keeping lists of those things. And with the goal of saying no more often to the energy drains and saying yes more often to the energy gains. And again, this is just that awareness step that I talk about all the time. You can't make positive change until you get aware and mindful as to what you're doing right now. And so this list of energy drains versus energy gains is a really great place to start. That will give you kind of an inventory of what are the things that I'm doing, what's taking up my time during the week, and how are those things serving me or not serving me. And hopefully that will give you some guidance when it comes to where you need to say no more often and where you need to say yes more often.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a burnout and balance coach, I help busy high achievers like you create a more balanced, joyful life. To be sure you don't miss any upcoming bite-sized conversations, subscribe now to this podcast. For more balance and wellness tips or to connect with me, visit my website at wendymccallum.com. That's WENDYMCCALLUM.com.